Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Thanks for tuning in for another episode. I got a great comment from a viewer the other day. They were admiring all the tackle I have here. They exaggerated the numbers of packs of plastics as well as all the different boxes that I have in the room, but I am very fortunate to have a lot of tackle. So they wanted to know, as a kayak angler, what would be 5 plastic baits that I would bring with me? They're looking for the most versatile, specific colors in the exact bait, and they want to know why. They said they're very limited as to how much tackle they can afford and how much tackle they can bring with them in their kayak. And seeing that I have lots and lots of tackle, they wanted to know which would be the ones that I would grab if I was very limited. And it's a really interesting comment because they brought up a lot of really good points in the comment itself. They specifically asked for what would be my top 5 hard baits, what would be my top 5 plastics, and went on a bunch of different things. It was a very lengthy comment. I enjoyed reading it very much so. So I figured I'd concentrate just on the plastic baits today. And I have to tell you guys, anytime I get one of these questions where it's like, give me your top 5 top waters, give me your top 5 plastic baits, I probably spend way too much time thinking about the answer. Because the reality is, when I sit down and start thinking about if I could have any plastic baits in one specific color, what would they be? You got to start thinking about the versatility of the baits, and you got to think about how valuable they are if they're not versatile, meaning, do you have a bait that is really only good in a specific technique or maybe in a single presentation, but it's so good at that it would be worth carrying that versus carrying a bait that maybe could be used as a trailer, as a Ned rig, as a shaky head, as a Carolina rig, you name it, it could be used as it. So it was an interesting question, and like I said, I'll spend a lot less time filming and editing this video than I did thinking about this. So I want to share these with you. Before I do share them with you, I do want to remind you that if you're looking for additional content from me, I do have a members only page. So there's additional monthly videos for that. We do a monthly live stream as well as direct contact to me if that's something that you're interested. Also, guys, I'm just going to give a shout out for the channel. If you watch on a somewhat regular basis and have not subscribed yet to the channel, but you enjoy the content, hit that subscriber button. It's a great way to support the channel without doing anything much more than clicking the button. So it's very much appreciated at the same time. All right, so let's get into this question. And before I begin on this too, I'm going to point out, if you have video topics that you want me to cover, or you have specific questions that you're interested in me answering, put that in the comment section as well. Because at this point, I've got a huge list of viewer suggestions as well as my own personal suggestions. But having content come out on a daily basis, I'm always looking for things to answer and things to get into, especially when they're seasonal. It's one thing for somebody to ask me about fall fishing right now, but the reality is a lot of us are looking forward to spring fishing before we can even start thinking about fall fishing. All right, so let's get into this. 5 baits. Like I mentioned earlier, I really tried to look at the versatility of the bait. How many different techniques can I use it for? As well as the color. Is it a specific color that works in some situations but not others? Or is it a very versatile color, meaning I can use it almost anywhere? As well as, is the bait good enough by itself to carry it for pretty much only one technique? And I got a little bit of both here. So let's just start off with one that I think almost everyone would carry, and that's a soft stick bait. This specifically is my go-to. This is the Max Scent uh, Power Berkeley Power Bait Max Scent, the general 5-inch size in the purple color. So I'm going to talk about the color first. So this color is very much like an oxblood color. It's not a traditional purple, and I find that this color excels in both clear water as well as dirty water, and therefore this would probably be my go-to color. It's one of the first colors I grab no matter where I'm at. Generally speaking, I think most people would say a green pumpkin color is ideal, but this specific purple color, which is a very hard color to get right now in the general, the point is it fits both categories, and I feel really good throwing it in tannic water like at Lake Okeechobee, And I feel really good about throwing it in clear water like at Lake Champlain. This was actually the best color I was throwing at Lake Champlain this past year. So from a color standpoint, I got to go with the purple color of this Maxent the General. Now, I would not say that necessarily about other colors. The purple Cinco, for instance, is not nearly the same, and that would be not be my first choice in terms of color, but I specifically like this one. So the reason, and I think it's pretty obvious why I have a soft stick bait like the General, is that it's not only very versatile, it's probably one of, if not the best, fish catching plastic that we have. You rig it wacky, you can Texas rig it, you can rig it on a shaky head, you can rig it on a Carolina rig, you can use it as a trailer on a vibrating jig. There's really no wrong way to fish this, and it just catches fish. So to me, it's an absolute must. I think most people would probably agree that this is what you need in terms of if you're limited to 5 plastics, you gotta have a soft stick bait. And this would be the one that I would be throwing. Next up, we're gonna kind of go to the opposite end of the spectrum with a moving bait. So remember, this is plastics in general. It specifically entails everything. So I need to have a smaller swim bait. And this would be probably my go-to. Well, it would be my go-to, but I actually really considered going against this. This is the Kitech Swing Impact Fat 3.3 in the Tackle Warehouse Pro Blue red color, or Tackle Warehouse Pro Blue color. So it's a little bit different than the traditional Pro Blue red color, which is one of the top sellers. This has a little bit more like shimmer to it, so it's a little bit more bait fishy. But the key here is, by itself, this is probably the best swim bait out there in terms of a smaller finesse swim bait. The reason I thought about going with a different 3.3-inch swim bait like the Power Bait Power Swimmer, or even something along the lines of maybe a small skinny dipper, a little dipper, a Reaction Innovations, is because those baits are harder and therefore they would be better at being fished as a trailer, which makes it more versatile. You can use the Kitech Fat Impacts as trailers, they just don't hold up nearly as well. If you set the hook too hard or rip it through grass, sometimes the bait slides down and you just go through a lot more baits versus a hardened plastic bait that works better as a trailer. But in this case, I gave the nod to it just because it still works good as a trailer and it's an exceptional swim bait by itself. Again, I don't know that this is anything groundbreaking to a lot of people, but you just because of how good it is, and it's a bait that the majority of bass anglers out there throw. But this would be it. The Tackle Warehouse Pro Blue color 3.3 Fat Impact Swing Impact Fat by Kitech. All right. So I've kind of got a higher up bait. And again, from a fishing standpoint, you can use that bait in a lot of different manners. You can, and this is one of the reasons I went with a little bit smaller size. It's really good by itself, really good on a drop shot, really good on a wobble head or a swing head dragged on the bottom. You can fish it on a Carolina rig. Again, it's a swim bait would have to be included in my top 5 plastic baits to bring with me because of the versatility of it and how good it is just by itself. So if we're talking about a bait just by itself, like I mentioned earlier, some baits are good enough by itself and are not that versatile where their power as an individual bait comes through. And that would probably have to go with why I chose this guy right here. This is the Z-Man Finesse TRD, and it's just the green pumpkin color. A very good bait and exceptionally good as a Ned Rig. And to me, a Ned Rig is a bait that if I'm looking at catching fish or fishing's tough, you got to consider it to be one of your top options. And when I'm thinking about Neds overall, I probably would say that this is the best one out there. If I'm under every condition, this is the one that's probably going to generate more strikes for me. The other reason I chose this is because of the floating tendency behind it. I generally would say, that I like some of the other ones, like a Robo Worm has their Ned Rig, the Berkeley Little General is a great one. Those are sinkers. The difference between this and those is the fact that if I want to really slow my bait down, I can get that out of the floating Z-Man Finesse TRD versus the others, I can't. If I want to make this fall as fast as the others, I can just go with a bigger jig head, but I can't really slow it down. So I would rather have the option of having a bait fall super, super slow with the Finesse TRD versus one where I can't really slow the fall down based on what jig head I go with. The other thing is I do like fishing this on a drop shot as well, and that floating tendency is another key to that. So generally speaking, it's really only a two bait technique for me between the Ned and a drop shot, and therefore I would give this the leg up over other Ned baits if I could only have one. And again, having said that, with all of these different types of baits, I use lots of different types of baits by different manufacturers. It's all based on the condition and the circumstance. But if I had to choose one, these would be it. So once I've got all this, I need to have a bait to flip with. You guys know how much I like throwing a Texas rig, how much I like power fishing and flipping, whether it's grass or wood. So I've got to have at least one flipping bait, and I don't think it's going to be a surprise to most of you. This is the 4-inch Berkley Power Bait Pit Boss, just an absolute workhorse for me. And the reason I went with this over some of the other flipping baits that I like is the fact that it's a little bit more durable because it's that stiffer power bait plastic, as well as the fact that it works better as a trailer, and therefore I can work it in a lot of different techniques. So I'll fish this as a trailer on swim jigs, on vibrating jigs. I'll fish it on a jig. I'll fish it just as a Carolina rig or on a wobble head. It's a very, very versatile bait. It catches fish under almost all circumstances. And in this case, again, it's just the green pumpkin. I feel like it's one of the best all-around colors. I would rather throw green pumpkin in dark water than go with a really dark color in very, very clear water. So if I can only have one color, we're going to go with the green pumpkin. But the 4-inch Berkley Power Bait Pit Boss is a mainstay, and I don't think it's a major surprise that I would have that on my list. And in fact, all of the baits on here, guys, I think are Tackle Warehouse best sellers. Maybe, well, I guess I don't know what colors are their top sellers, but I do know these baits are top sellers, which indicates not just that these are some of my favorites, but they're very, very well received by the angling community. All right, so if we got one more bait, I had to go with something, again, more finessey. You know, I feel like you really have to have a drop shot bait because a drop shot can be absolutely excellent. So I went with the Berkley Maxcent Flatworm. Now, this is the larger size, the 4¼ inch size. And it's the Gobiyashi color, which is quickly becoming my favorite flatworm color. The reason I went with the 4¼ inch size is pretty straightforward. One, again, if I'm limited to just one size, one color, you know, one drop shot bait in this case, I want a bait that I can still use in several different techniques. So the 4¼ inch size, absolute great drop shot bait. I don't think anyone would argue that. However, you all know how much I love hover strolling, so much so that I've got my own hook for it. And from that standpoint, the 4¼ inch size is a much better bait to throw on my hover rig hook than the 3½ inch size. So from that standpoint, I want a little bit bigger. The other thing is this little bit larger size works better on as like a shaky head. So if you wanted to fish it more as a shaky head worm, you can throw it on a shaky head hook and fish it from that standpoint too. So it's a little bit more versatile than the smaller size flatworm, which is potentially the best drop shot bait out there. But I personally, under these conditions, would go with the 4¼ inch Gobiyashi Berkley Maxcent Flatworm. Just a killer and a beautiful color. Something that mimics both your bait fish as well as your bluegill and your crayfish with that mixture of, you know, a lighter colored bottom in your darker green pumpkin colored back. It's a great, great color, and one that I use under a ton of different circumstances. So there's my answer to the viewer question. Put in the comment section, what are the 5 baits and colors? If you could only have 5, what would they be? Put it in the comment section so that we can see from you. I'm willing to bet, if you really sit down and think about it, that you're going to have pretty similar baits to me. You know, when I thought about it, there's a lot of other baits that I truly love, whether it's a speed worm style bait, whether it's like a brush hog, you know, there's flukes. But once you start looking at a lot of those baits, they're a little bit more situational, and they're not as, to me, they're not as well-rounded, and just having the ability to use them with a ton of different techniques. So I want to know from you guys. Hopefully you enjoyed this one. If you did, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and stay tuned. We'll have a new tip video coming out for you tomorrow.